Hello, welcome back to Final Fantasy V Forge of Fiesta. I am your Final Fantasy, Diabetus. So today, we're gonna do some errands. After we find out where these errands are with a quick map check. So, the big thing is, you got a party of 2 summoners and a geomancer. The geomancer is effectively a summoner, because, let's face it, geomancy gets kinda useless pretty quickly, especially by this point in the game. So we got 1 Mystic Knight, 3 summoners. We gotta get us some summons. And that's gonna be the big item of the day here. Well, big item, as in we're gonna get 2 of them. But first, I think this is what I'm doing. There's some literal use of the speed up. You could encounter those, I think, in as far back as World 1, was it? And even now, they're pretty durable, these object darts, as I call them in La France. But with 5 of them here, this is a good point to demonstrate, I think, our new summons. Where cinematic summoning began, Final Fantasy V. Of course, best way to demonstrate is with incredible amounts of overkill. So a few people were going back and forth in comments about how to pronounce it. I think the consensus appeared to be on Bahamut, as in M-O-O-T, Bahamut, Bahamut. I'll just go with Baha then, as I mentioned before, or just Bah. Bah. Or I'll just say it in a different way every time, so eventually I'll be correct. So first trick, we gotta get Odin, we gotta beat him off in less than a minute. Can we beat him off that quickly? Yes, I selected, and I'll show you how. It's incredibly complicated. But you have a hasted Mystic Knight, you cast Break, even though Odin is a boss and a summon, which I've always thought to be some sort of mythical force. We not only break him, we mug him as well. I'm assuming the other summon that I can't remember how to say it because it's kind of wordy. I'll just call it the summon that's like Shote from Final Fantasy VI. I think that... Did that cast Break? Or was that more of a death thing? Petrification. It's the Break summon. Caddy. I'll just call him Caddy. Maybe that would work too. And would only require 1 turn. So, even though I've got pretty much all the mystic weapons I need for this particular party loadout, I do want to get at least 1 of the other tablets. Possibly 2, I forget. The reason is, in order to get to Fork Tower, which is just a little bit next to Spoon Tower, it is currently locked by a mystic barrier. And to get past that mystic barrier, we've got to get this tablet. So I'm gonna learn eventually that using a Bahamut so much is a bit on the wasteful side. Even with the gold hairpins that I have on 2 of the summoners, it's a little bit excessive on the old MP. In fact, this Wandering Newbie gave me a hot tip. The Magus Rod is the rod that enhances the elemental properties of your summons. That does in fact boost the power of the most powerful elemental summon I have at my disposal currently, which is Sildra. The boost in power it gets from that makes it pretty much as powerful as Bahamut for much less MP. So I think with gold hairpins, Sildra's like 16 magic point dollars, whereas Bahamut is, well, I don't know, a bit more, like 60 or so? It's not the most expensive, I think that's Phoenix, but it costs a pretty penny. So a good way to save some MP in the long run. But for now, of course, I'm like, hey, I got Bahamut, man. Most powerful non-elemental summon, it's guaranteed damage. I'm gonna spam that shit. And speaking of spam, the fights in this game. Feels like in World 3 the random battles just get more and more frequent. Now that may be just something in my head, because as you start the game you're like, okay, this is a new novel thing. Well, not new novel thing, but you know, you get used to the random battle thing again going into RPGs, and then after a while it gets a little bit tedious, and then by World 3 you're like, oh my god, please stop happening. Here's a quick Odin demonstration. Much like Odin in other Final Fantasy games you may be familiar with, this particular Odin has two forms of attack. I believe in 7 is the first one where I remember using him frequently. Odin was a summon, or an Esper, in Final Fantasy VI, but I don't remember. I was baby when I was playing Final Fantasy VI back in the day, so I don't think I quite had a grip on how summoning worked. I didn't know, you know, kind of scrolled up in your magic list to get to the thing you could summon. So I think in Final Fantasy VI it did a full enemy party KO all the time, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong. But in Final Fantasy VII, this game does two things. So it has the Gungnir, the Gungan, where it throws Jar Jar at a single enemy, does a good bit of non-elemental damage, pretty reliable, pretty swell, pretty swank, I must say. And then the other spell, the Zanzasukin spell, decapitates all the enemies. Remember in Final Fantasy VII, again, of course, back in the day, I was baby. So it was not difficult to impress me, but in 7 when you first summon him and he used his spear, just the way he steps out of that portal to the Netherverse, the Voidverse, whatever you want to call it, and he rides down on a horse, he's like, hey, what's up? He just kind of looks around, and he like has this neon pink spear. He's like, yeah, you gonna get fucked up. And then he just tosses that shit. It looks like he completely misses. Like, Odin has terrible aim, incredible near or farsightedness. He's gotta see an optometrist. But then, lo and behold, it parts the sky, which becomes cloudy no matter what environment you're in, and then comes crashing down from above. The physics of it make absolutely no sense. But it's still pretty cool. Then, of course, you go back and play Final Fantasy V. Years later, you're now an adult baby instead of a regular baby. And, you know, these summons just aren't impressive. But I do appreciate their brevity, I gotta say. Especially in a game like this, or with a party setup like this, where you have essentially 3 summoners. Yeah, I'm inclined to, you know, speed up all the summons. But it was a long-winded way of saying, yes, indeed, this Odin has 2 different attacks, which I don't think the second one has been revealed yet, but just trust me on this. It splits up the enemies into like 3 different sprite segments, like that, which I sped through. But if you slow down the video, go back, play it at 1/3 to 1/10 of normal speed, and you'll see that Zanzujus through the Bahamut spell. This dungeon is, you know, it's fine. It is much less irritating than the Pyramid Dungeon. But, you know, there's nothing noteworthy about it. Just kind of like, alright, yeah, this is an RPG dungeon, alright. I mean, there's just nothing to write home about. You kind of have to explore some nooks and crannies to find treasure, which is, again, fine. You know, I'm not overly impressed. It's just fine. Look, I'm in a hurry to beat this Fiesta at this point. I've got, as of today, I have less than 2 weeks to finish this, which I believe is doable. I know you get special cool points if you beat off the optional bosses as well, Omega and Shinryu. Which I was doing some debate about this, because I do remember Omega from back in the day vaguely. Kind of like, you know, Emerald Weapon, Ruby Weapon, your super bosses. Not as ridiculous as them, because they had just a shitload of HP, which is pretty much the only reason you really need to get the super secret summon materia Knights of the Round at the end of things, is just specifically because those bosses can survive many of them. But the super bosses here, whether you can do them or not is largely dependent on your party loadout. The beautiful thing about the Fiesta is that the regular game, it's even beatable with 4 Berserkers. Maybe even the super bosses are beatable with 4 Berserkers if you, I don't know, grind a lot, get to level 99 perhaps. But this particular party, and I will admit I looked ahead a little bit just to see what Omega's kind of stats were. Kind of his character sheet, his profile. And I don't think, unless, like I said, I grind up to super high levels, I'm not sure it's doable with this particular party. Because one, his evade is super high, like super, super high. So he's a robot man, so he's weak against lightning. So you have Thundaga Blade, you'd think, oh, you have a guaranteed high source of damage. But even when things are spell-bladed, I believe the enemy's dodge chance is based on their evade still, not their magic evade. This ain't like old Final Fantasy VI where magic evade was like all of your evade. And you could make some ridiculous superpowered characters by giving them the right gear. Like effectively immortal characters. Dodge everything. Can't really exploit that here, sadly. So, and on top of that, Omega also appears to absorb almost everything, except, as I said, lightning, because he's a robot man. So you have the Mystic Knight, your one strong source of damage, because Thundaga plus sword equals lots and lots of damage, maybe even 9999. However, if he's dodging it all the time, it's not reliable. So then you have the, let's just say, again, 3 summoners, Geomancer and 2 summoners. The only way they can really hurt him with a weakness is Rama, which is kind of a weak summon as far as base damage. You can't use Sildra because it's wind, he would absorb that. I would say Bahamut probably works. But, again, you're wasting MP at that point. And then all this is in the meantime, the party's getting hammered by stuff. So I have the luxury of having a party that is highly offensive. As in, they say a lot of really problematic stuff. No, they do a lot of damage. Summons Mystic Knight, very high octane party. But defense is hurting a little bit. Sure, if it was a physical monster primarily. Also, this is a problematic setup, isn't it? But with if you have an enemy doing a lot of physical attacks, you have Golem, obviously, but then if there's a lot of magic attacks and they're non-reflectable, then the party's kind of fucked. Mystic Knight can do statuses, but I don't think Omega is harmed by any of them. So it's just a nasty situation, all in all. Also, my party would have likely been wiped here. That's what I get for trying to breeze through things. And then just go with the fucking sun. When the going gets tough, just say fuck it. But anyway, going back to Omega. Without super grinding, I don't know if I can really do much to him. I consulted with some Final Fantasy V experts. Andy AML, Raving Loon, good guys. And apparently my party can handle Shinryu. With some tricks that I have access to. So one thing with my party, they don't have access to a lot of like tricks and gimmicks. You know, we got the Mystic Knight who can do statuses to a limited degree, and then you have summons. Which is good, because if the enemy is being gimmicky and changes like a wall changey thing, then you're pretty much fine. but if there's any real tricks to it, then things get a little more complicated. So I'll be interested to see how the Sexdeath's dungeon, final dungeon, the Rift, goes down. Because yeah, that part of the game I just plain don't remember whatsoever. So the thing with a lot of RPGs is that, you know, you want to go back and replay them to re-experience the nostalgia a little bit. But then whenever I've done that, you know, you go to like go through World 1, or you go through Midgar, or the World of Balance, or Disc 1, and then you're like, why was I doing this? So the early parts of the game, very much in your mind, but those latter parts kind of get forgotten. So yeah, I don't remember the Rift very much at all. I vaguely remember lots of bosses. That much is a thing, I do recall, but beyond that, not so much. But I'm hoping, as far as the basic enemies, my party can breeze through them, throw out some Sildras, some Behemoths, and then everything will be fine. Also, there's what's-his-name that I wasn't paying attention to when he got summoned. Caddy. Caddy the Demon. So here I just saw, like, could there be treasure over there? Gotta know. There's treasure. And whenever I'm going off the beaten path and investigating for treasure, that's when I'm inclined to run away from all the random fights. Looking back on it, I'm wondering if this dungeon has, if those vines are climbable at any point. Maybe there's some hidden treasure up there, because in the, was it the Wind Shrine? Of course, there you had to climb up the vines for the sake of progress. So would there be vines specifically for treasure? And if there were vines specifically for treasure, would it even be good treasure? It's my one major hang-up with the Final Fantasy V 4-job Fiesta. There may be treasure, sure, but it's not useful treasure, since your party's going to be so limited. Speaking of the useless treasure, getting lots of these dark matters, but they don't really dark matter much to my party. That's a chemist exclusive, isn't it? Is it not? Circlet, I think, is okay, but I believe I've already got him, so, eh. Alright, so it's post save point open room. That is a sign. Well, it is a sign that it's boss time. I have protect rings on most everybody at this point, because I just wasn't sure what better things to put on them. Maybe the Elven Mantle is still good, but turns out when I was consulting my Final Fantasy V experts, it seems like the Hermes shoes are kind of the way to go. I mean, haste is always a good thing in a Final Fantasy. Alright, so continuing the streak of Final Fantasy V gimmick bosses, we have Fandango here. And how would you describe Fandango? Well, Fandango is, Wendigo is flashing his Wangdongo, his Wang Dong goes right in my face. I mean, look at how the legs are. Is there, maybe not even be a dog there. Maybe it's just an androgynous creature. Well, anyway. The gimmick here, which will become quite obvious with these summons getting thrown out soon, only one of them is real. But which one? Unfortunately, it does not stay consistent. For example, I hit that one twice with the MK, but now that one's real. It's an interesting gimmick, but for this particular fight, it's more tedious than anything else. The pace of the fight, one, is really, really slow. Like, there's parts where just nothing happens for a while. Because some of them skip their turns, which I guess means they're changing who the real one is. It's really not a problematic boss for this particular party, though. Because, sure, they can attack multiple times and frost people. But when I have access to Phoenix, I can just revive whoever dies, and in the process, it will also reveal who the actual Wang Dingo is. Shown here. Booyah. So it's an interesting gimmick, but if you have a party with multi-hit spells, then it's kind of just like, well, kind of stay the course, I guess. Although I probably should have put the shoes on one of the summoner people instead of the Mystic Knight, because the Mystic Knight has less of a clue who's real. But yeah, the fight's just kind of like, is it my turn yet? Can't think of any situation where this party, unless I was just underleveled or something, that would be particularly bad. Maybe I'm sure there are other party setups where this boss gets to be more of a ugh kind of thing. If you have lots of single hit people, like if you have, for example, a knight, or what other classes are kind of limited to single target shit? I don't know. It's a mystery. Huh. Yeah, just periods like that where just nothing happens for a few seconds and you just kind of get on with it. Sticking with Behemoth for the time being, just because I don't know any better and it still does a shitload of damage. Keep the Mystic Knight alive with Drain. It's all pretty ho-hum. So is it when they blink, or when one of them blinks, does that mean the one that just blunk is now the... Well, maybe not. I was just watching it back. I was like, no, it's that one. I thought I saw them blink. I don't know how it works, but hey, who cares? See how tedious this can be? It's just like, dude, just want to get on with things. I never did try Odin in this fight. I'm wondering if I could instantly kill everything. Or break it, maybe? Probably not. But yeah, they have one final fuck you attempt in them before they go. Don't even know what that one was trying to do. And then that's the end. X-Death, methinks you need more better monsters. That's the best taunt I had, sorry. But this unlocks Spork Tower. A tower that is perhaps skippable for a lot of parties, but for me it is quite essential. It is our ye old way of saying you will have to split up your party. So let us now cut to Fork Tower, currently in progress. There we go. How bad is Fork Tower? Well, depends. You could easily fuck up Fork Tower. For example, if I had had Diabetus go to the left instead of to the right, then that would have been a big problem. And you'll see why very shortly. For the sake of splitting them up here, I guess we'll keep the sisters together, and then have Diabetus and Kryle do the right path. I don't feel like it really matters, the split, as far as the pairings themselves. Because again, you got 3 people who can summon, so no matter what, you'll have at least 1 person who can summon shit. It's just a matter of trying to figure out which is the better path for the 2 people who can summon shit. Turns out that is the left path. I like the concept of Fork Tower. Sometimes in situations in RPGs of old where you had to split up your party, I used to dread it a lot because, say, Final Fantasy VI in particular, when you do Kefka's Tower at the end, I tended to have one super good party who I'd used most, and then everybody else was not really used a lot. So that resulted in parties where you have like 1 good person and 3 people who'd hardly been used, or just having to do some off-tower grinding for the characters that you don't really like all that much, like Setzer. If you don't know how to game the slots, he's kind of a piece of shit. Or who else was kind of shit in Final Fantasy VI? Was Locke shit? Probably. But for Fork Tower here, it's alright. Your party members, none of them should be underleveled, except maybe Lena from being kind of offline for a little while she was watching people dance in the castle endlessly. And the enemies are simple enough that, you know, 2 party members can handle them. It's pretty well designed that way. Though I noticed in a couple of recordings for the Diabetus path, Wonder Wand, I think might actually be very useful later. BT dubs. There's some enemies in the tower where, like, some of the enemies here do not like being physically attacked at all, so if you have somebody with a sword, or a knight type character for instance, like Mr. Diabetus. At one time I got counterattacked so hard, it wiped both of them. Oops. And it may have been this guy. Because that's why when it came up I was like, I don't want to touch it. Nice. So after completing this tower, I will have the most superpowered party possible with what I got. Because then you get... Now this guy does not belong in a magic-themed temple. E Honda here. So let's cut him in half. I feel okay wasting MP on the summon since Kryl has the gold hairpin. We'll probably keep the gold hairpin for the whole game. So then I believe this is take us to the end of the tower. Defender is a sword I think I can't use. I think it's another knight exclusive. So there's a little prep here. Sure, I don't use up my MP in the midst of the fight. How are we going to communicate when we should take it? Because there's absolutely no way we can hear each other. I guess it seemed kind of silly to yell, in fact. But